No organism in nature can tolerate living in emergency mode for extended periods of time. So if 70% of the time a person's living in survival, living in stress, in survival, what we do in order to survive is we are going to select the worst case scenario. And we are going to begin to plan our behaviors and our emotions in that experience, because anything less than the worst case scenario means we have better chances of survival. So we plan for the worst, we emotionally embrace it, and anything less means we can survive. So out of the infinite potentials in the quantum field, anxiety really represents a poor imagination, but it's highly adaptive if you're living in survival, because you got to get ready for that. So 70% of the time, people are selecting the worst case event in their life and emotionally embracing it, and they're programming their autonomic nervous system into a very specific destiny. And it turns out if you keep doing that and you create the emotions of fear and worry and anxiety, and you do that for 10 years or 5 years or 3 years, your body is going to unconsciously become programmed to fear. And it's going to have a panic attack without you. Try as you may with your conscious mind to control it, you've programmed it subconsciously. And now the body, as the mind, is running the show. So the hormones of stress create the emotions of anger, of aggression, of hostility, of violence, of frustration, of hatred, of fear, of anxiety, of guilt, of shame, of hopelessness, of powerlessness, depression. Those are all chemicals that are derived from the hormones of stress. And when we live by the hormones of stress, we become very selfish. Why? Because when you're in survival, you got to take care of the self. Your attention is on your body, right? Your attention is on your external environment. There's predators out there. The rush of adrenaline causes the senses to become heightened, and you're a materialist, and you're trying to predict the future because there's better chances of survival if you can predict the future based on the past. When that occurs then, over time, the body begins to break down, because it's a scientific fact that the hormones of stress downregulate genes to create disease in the long term. So if you can turn on the stress response just by thought alone, and the hormones of stress can make you sick, then your thoughts can literally make you sick. So the question is, if your thoughts can make you sick, is it possible then that your thoughts can make you well? My definition of addiction is something that you can't stop, right? And most people who struggle from addictions are trying to regulate and alter their internal state. Now, you and I have been hypnotized and conditioned into believing that change happens outside of us. People are looking for something outside of them to change their internal state. It's kind of a Newtonian principle. You wait for your wealth to come to feel abundant. You wait for your healing to occur to feel wholeness. You wait for your success to show up so you feel empowered. You wait for your new relationship to show up to feel love. You're waiting for the event outside of you to happen to change how you feel inside of you. That's cause and effect. And we're conditioned based on consumerism and marketing and programming that that's the way it works. To get something to relieve yourself. And the problem with that is that people begin to confuse true happiness with pleasure, and they're not the same thing. So people who have addictions like that typically have had some very difficult past experiences that have branded them emotionally, and they just don't know how to change. They just don't know, and they're just looking for some relief inside of them so that they can make that feeling go away. So we can become distracted by our external environment for a period of time, but then when you realize that the sports car or the new wardrobe or the vacation or whatever people do to try to make the feeling go away, the novelty of that that thing outside of us wears off because we're trying to re-identify with our environment. When that goes away, the next thing that people do is they look for some immediate change. And so they take a drug, they drink something, they gamble, they watch pornography, and the event outside of them changes their internal chemistry. And the moment they notice that the pain or the emptiness goes away, the moment they feel differently, they look to see what caused it. And this is when the attachment begins. Here's the problem, though. The rush of chemical change that takes place, the pleasure centers in the brain, there's a huge release of the pleasure chemicals. And the release, the intensity of those release of those chemicals begins to desensitize the receptor sites in the brain. So as the brain chemicals are released and the receptor sites become desensitized, the next time you gamble, the next time you take the drug, the next time you shop, you need a little bit more the next time. So then what happens is the pleasure centers start to get recalibrated to a higher and higher level, so you're always going to need more to make that feeling go away. Sounds like an addiction to me. And so people get lost because then without the dependency on that external substance, the body, which has become the mind, is craving its relief. And so an addiction really is when the body is the mind. So you may say with your conscious mind, I want to give up drinking, I want to give up pornography, I want to give up gaming, I want to give up over shopping, I want to give it up consciously. But the body has been conditioned from the past subconsciously. And so now the body's the mind. Now, no one's told people that true change can happen within them. And so then when people start to realize that there's a gap between the external world and how they present themselves to the world and their attention on the outer world and their attention on their inner world and how they really feel. And if they're spending the majority of their time looking outside of them for change and they don't want to look at this feeling, all they want to do is make that feeling go away, they're going to wind up in trouble. So true change is when you start looking within and you become conscious of your unconscious thoughts. In neuroscience, it's called metacognition. You become aware of your habits and your unconscious behaviors. And you look at those emotions that are connected to past experiences and allow yourself to observe them. So then think about this. If 95% of who we are by the time we're 35 years old are those programmed states, the moment you're observing how you think, how you act, and how you feel, it means you're no longer the program. You're now a consciousness observing the program, and you're beginning to objectify your subjective self. You are seeing yourself through the eyes of someone else. Turns out that the size of the frontal lobe, the crowning achievement of the human being, 40% of our entire brain, that's what separates us from all other species. It's the boss, it's the CEO, it's the conscience, it's the creative center. It's what speculates possibilities, it's what learns from its mistakes, it's what has intention, attention. It regulates and controls behaviors and emotional reactions. When your forebrain begins to turn on, when that begins to happen, you are now beginning to become the executive in your life. You're starting to gain more control over your life. If you're living primarily as the body-mind, then the hindbrain is looking for some chemical relief. So by the mere fact that you can begin to observe who you're being means you could modify who you are to do a better job in life. So then going from the old self to the new self, I call that crossing the river of change. Because the hardest part about change is not making the same choices you did the day before. And the moment you're not going to think the same way, make the same choice that leads to the same behavior, that creates the same experience, that produces the same emotion, you are not going to feel like yourself. It's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel unfamiliar. There's going to be a certain amount of uncertainty. You are going to feel the state of unpredictability. And that's the moment you step into the river of change. And the moment you step into the river of change, then that discomfort means you're in the unknown. And so the body, which has been conditioned to the mind, who's been living in the past, would rather hold on to the guilt because at least it's familiar. They'd rather hold on to their own emptiness and unworthiness than not feel that, because that's the unknown. So people cling to the familiar, and it transcends rationality. So then, the moment you step into that river and the body has become the mind, the body starts sending signals back to the brain because it wants to return back to the familiar self. And this is when we start to hear all the chatter, the sub-vocalizations. You're not good enough. You're too much like your mother. It's your ex-husband's fault. Start tomorrow. This doesn't feel good. What's wrong with me? I want to kill myself. That's the body saying, I don't want to go in the unknown. I don't trust the unknown. I'd rather hold on to this. Now, going from that old self to the new self is the biological, the neurological, the chemical, the hormonal, the genetic death of the old self. And most people, they step out into that unknown and it feels so uncomfortable, they can't predict it, they return back to the known. People say to me, well, I can't predict my future. And I always say to them, well, the best way to predict your future is to create it. Not from the known, but from the unknown. And that void, that unknown, is the perfect place to create from.
I hope you enjoyed this amazing interview with Dr. Joe Dispenza. Before we continue with our daily practice of completing the inspiring quotes, please consider hitting that like button so this message could spread to other people also. So complete the quote challenge. Today's quote belongs to Dr. Joe Dispenza, and it goes like this. The moment you feel uncomfortable, you just stepped into the river. Write your answers in the comments below the video. Even if you are not sure what the correct answer is, try and guess. If you like this video, share it with your friends. Subscribe and click the bell button next to the subscribe button and join Good Vibes community. If you really like what we do here and want to support us, you can join our channel and our community for a symbolic fee and get many other additional features. You can do that by clicking the join button next to the subscribe button, or you can click on the link in the description of this video. Stay good and have a great day.
give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make.
Yo, I got a lot of shit to say, so I'ma do this every day. I'll be writing things until I'm fucking buried in my grave. 6 feet deep under, but my body won't decay. Cause my messages are timeless, so they'll put them on display. Oh yeah, I rap with a certainty, I have a sense of urgency. A message for eternity, for everyone internally. I had some people burning me, but now they fucking learn to see I ain't the one to fuck with, now they looking nervously. And I don't really care what you think of me respectfully. You can kick rocks if you think you're fucking better, see. I will outwork you, turn you to an enemy. Hurt you so bad that you're gonna need some therapy. I got the motherfucking recipe. I've been cooking up hits, I'ma leave a legacy. You'll be looking small when you're standing right next to me. I'm 5'10", bitch, but I'm 10 feet
Cause I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Cause I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way.